Hello there and welcome to Wildlife number 3. This is Effie Wild coming to you from my little studio in southwestern Ontario, where I am sitting here crispy fried to a lovely shade of firelight. I attended a festival all last week, and while I avoided a sunburn for the first 4 days of the festival, on the very last day I forgot to put on sunscreen or didn't put on enough, and I came home a lovely shade of red. I also lost my voice, but you guys are familiar with that phenomenon. I lose my voice pretty much every single time I go to a festival. There's a lot of hailing, yelling, and shenanigans, and staying up till dawn, and sitting by the fire and breathing in all that wood smoke. And so I usually come home with less of a voice than this. I was actually a little bit more mindful this time about how much screaming and yelling I did. I wanted to get this recorded. It's Tuesday. I'd like to get this out by Friday. So here I am. No voice or not, I can still manage to squeak out some thoughts for you. This edition of Wildlife is called Telling the Bees. It's an old English story or charm that if you go and tell the bees of your hive everything that's going on in your family life, in your household, that they will continue to produce honey for you. And if you neglect to include them in that manner, then they will stop. So I like this idea of telling the bees. And this spread is being done in my 18-month, I think it's an 18-month calendar. It's meant to be used as a planner, but of course, after I finish the week, I go ahead and put a piece of paper over it and work in it as though it is an art journal. This is a really lovely way to track my week, to document my week in art form. I tend to put more formal spreads in this one because this is the one that I'm going to look at as the years pass and go, okay, so where was I at, in April of 2019? Where was I at in June of 2019? And then this journal will go through till March of 2020. So it's a really nice way to document my life. This elongated face is a thing for me. I've been really loving these elongated faces since 2016. The supplies that I'm working with for this journal are clear gesso, golden fluid acrylics, and Stabilo All Pencil, and that's just how I, got my start. These elongated faces help me to express things that may not be easy to express in a more realistic looking face. They help me to make sad faces or pensive faces, or just faces that are more emotive than the usual regular styled face. You can see I stenciled in a bee. I'm using fluid acrylics from Golden in Iridescent Fine Gold to get that in there. And because I like all of the elements in the spreads that I create to be somehow my own, I'm actually going over that stenciled image with a black pen in order to refine the edges and tweak it here and there, so it's just a little bit less stencil-y and a little bit more Effie. I do that almost all the time with text. If I've stamped it, any kind of stamp I use, I'll go over it with paint or pen, and stencils often get this treatment as well, especially if they're going to play any kind of major role in the painting. These elongated faces are very much inspired by Modigliani, the artist Modigliani. I also feel like they're a little bit Klimtish in their the way that I gild them, because these paintings always get some kind of gilding. And the shading is being done with a Faber Castell Pitt pen, which is one of my favorite ways to shade a face. You guys are going to hear me mention these a lot. If you're doing classes with me, you'll want to get the Pitt pens, especially in Danthrony blue, Indian red, magenta, and then there are a couple of greens that I really like working with as well. But I have a whole collection of them. They're pretty easy to find. You can get them from Chapters Indigo if you're in Canada. You can get them from Dick Blick. You can get them from Jet Pens. And they work beautifully over top of pretty much anything except untreated paper. I don't use them on paper unless the paper has something on it like fluid acrylic or gel medium or something like that. This process was just an absolute slow roll to completion. I took about 2 hours to finish this entire spread, and it was such a delight, such a pleasure to sit with what I was feeling in this moment, which I'll go into more in the uncensored version of this spread. Even though the story around telling the bees is really about ensuring that there is honey or sweetness in the family, in the household, I was also thinking of telling the bees as in telling the bees on someone. So a way to sort of get the stuff that we're carrying, the things that we would like to say to the people in our lives that maybe we can't speak to for whatever reason. This is a great way to sort of express that feeling of there are things that I want the universe to know, things you did, things you said, ways perhaps that you wounded or hurt me, and this is my way of expressing that particular energy, concept, or sentiment. The spread wasn't easy to do. I really struggled with the face. You guys will have seen me work with the chin there quite a bit. There's also a lot of wonk. The one eye is a lot higher than the other. This happens in pretty much every painting that I do. And I did struggle a little bit with how dark do I want her shading to be. I ended up going really, really dark. I felt like she needed to be moody in order to express the feeling that I was going for in this spread. So I did a lot of really heavy shading around the eyes, around the neck and shoulders, just to give her a real atmosphere. I wanted her to have attitude and fierceness and a kind of an attitude. This is a really beautiful spread to work on, and at some point during my walking away period, which usually happens after I'm finished a spread, it occurred to me that I had more to say. And so I went back into the spread. I'm going to show you guys the cropped version of that. The full version of that is just way too personal to put anywhere except on Patreon behind my little paywall, where the people that love my writing and love what I do in the world come and gather and partake in the uncensored versions of this work that I do. This was meant to represent kind of a beehive. I like the idea of her hair being a beehive for obvious reasons. And this is where the kind of klimt thing comes in. This stenciling in of gold into a very dark background using the Punchinella gave it kind of a klimt feel to me, really inspired me and made me feel like this was going in exactly the direction that I wanted to go. This sort of tealy green you're seeing going into this bee is actually interference paint from Golden. It's the interference green, or was it turquoise? I can't remember now. It was one or the other. And that just lit the bee up a little bit for me and helped it stand out from the background of her hair. Here I'm grunging things right up with an application of Stabilo All Pencil. This is going on just to make a little bit of a mess. Again, her attitude required that things be quite grungy, quite dark, and that was really the look that I was going for. It was all completely intentional. I'm adding my text now with a Pilot Permaball pen. I love these pens. They are waterproof once they're dry, and they're great for doing this kind of text. I'm adding the words, I'm telling the bees. Now the casual onlooker who knows about English folklore might assume that I'm telling the bees all of the happenings in my household, but you and I both know I'm telling the bees something about something that happened that was just really awful, and it's almost as though I'm putting that awfulness in the bees' hands so that they can take care of it. Bees bring honey, they can also bring a sting, and I'm really invoking the spirit of a sting in this spread and wanting to send that sting off where it belongs so that I'm no longer carrying it. I'm outlining the lettering with a Unibal Angelic color, I think they're called. They're a fine tip versus the broad tip Unibal gel pens. This is gold. These are really beautiful, but they are not waterproof. If you're going to use these, please note that if you dip your arm into them before they're dry, they're going to smear. If you don't fix them, you could smear them as well. Adding just a little bit of an outline of gold all around the place, and this piece is pretty much complete. I hope you enjoyed this. The full version again is over on Patreon at patreon.com/FEWild. All the loves. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.